So, on this podcast, I like to talk about marriage sometimes, and I usually talk about how, for some reason, it's like we need to revisit marriage, all right? And also how a lot more people nowadays are choosing not to get married, or they're just choosing to get married like really, really late. But this one is a new one. So, apparently, an Indonesian man chose to get married, so that's a good thing. But his option of a beloved significant other wasn't your regular person. It was actually a rice cooker. And the worst part about it is he ended up divorcing that rice cooker 4 days later.
Get ready for the battle of the sexes.
And I kid you the hell not, this is actually a real story. So, according to the entire story, the man is called Khairul Anam, and he married his rice cooker. In a series of pictures posted on Facebook on the 20th of September, the groom was seen smartly dressed in a white shirt with intricate embroidery along with a batik samping and white pants. It turns out it's a groom's attire, and his bride wore nothing but a thin veil. However, his bride was not your average run-of-the-mill bride. She was a rice cooker. Now, unfortunately, it seems as though the seemingly perfect pair's union was short-lived, as 4 days later, the man changed his status on Facebook from married to divorced. Now, the reasoning behind the separation is that apparently, according to the man, she, the rice cooker, is good at cooking rice but not at preparing any other dishes. And that is what caused the separation. And I can totally understand the guy, It's like me marrying my wife and realizing that we can only do missionary. Because, I don't know, probably she has no booty. Like, that's gonna hurt for me. Like, just knowing that I can only do missionary and it's probably only in the dark, like, that would make me feel bad. And for this guy, I don't even think it's the only thing, Probably a surge of electricity came in while they were arguing and, she blew a fuse. Or, she got turned off while they were trying to, make some rice, because I can understand their relationship was an interesting one. It was love at first rice or first price. Maybe it was an affordable one. And the man's decided to go in for it. And probably while they were married, he decided to spice things up in the kitchen, as most people like to do in their relationships, and make some pilau. And guess what? She didn't like it. So, in an effort to make sure that he felt bad about it, she decided to let it burn, So, in a sense, it was a match made in the kitchen, but as the saying goes, ukiake wa mchele, it doesn't mean that it's the start of a good relationship. So, I feel very sorry for the man, and I hope that he does manage to get another dish that can, revitalize his heart, so that hopefully he doesn't end up going into a whole phase and, banging the microwave, banging the oven, and, eventually cheating on his next dish with a pan. But anyways, that said, we should start the podcast. Unfortunately, it does not involve cooking, but it does involve quite a bit of relationships, love, and sex, so we might as well get into it. So, in typical fashion, welcome to Breaktime on West Side, your number one breaktime podcast, coming to you from Nairobi, Kenya. The man on the mic is a man who would much rather marry a butchery, because at least I know I can hang around and she can handle my meat. He's a man who used to believe that bukkake was a Japanese martial art style. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. The show is Battle of the Sexes, our weekly love, sex, and relationships show, where I get to talk about relationships. Normally they don't involve rice cookers, and sometimes they get to last longer than 4 days. Or 3 cups, I guess. And because I know quite a number of these topics are very discussable and very timeless, I usually like to leave them open to you guys, especially when I get towards the end. So if you ever listen and you feel like you want to discuss the same shit that I've been talking about on the episode, you can always hit me up on IG at Breaktime on Westside is the IG handle to hit me up on. On Facebook, it is at Breaktime on Westside as well. And on Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. And we can discuss some shit. And some of those discussions might even make it onto the podcast. Plus, if you are using Castbox, you can always feel free to just drop the comments there and I will attend to them accordingly. And we can continue our discussions over there. Now, that said, we should probably move it on to our main topic of today, but before we do that, we need to talk about Billie Eilish for a little bit. Now, Billie Eilish is a fairly young pop star who's kind of risen to fame and is known for having very interestingly colored hair. Sometimes it's green. The last time I checked, it's a little closer to gray. But she's been doing her thing. She has her fan base and she seems to have quite a number of people that love her. Now, unfortunately, over the past few weeks, she has been losing a couple of followers and has lost roughly about 100,000 followers over a very recent period of time. And the way she theorized why she's lost her followers was something that I found to be quite interesting, because she claims that people are scared of big boobs, and that was her explanation for losing 100k followers. Now, I know I'm not the most digitally savvy person when it comes to, looking at why it is people gain and lose followers on IG, but I don't think your tits are going to be one of the reasons why you lose followers. If anything, I'd think that it would be the reason why you'd gain followers. Because people on IG, more specifically us guys, will want to look at something that's, appealing to our eyes. And if we see a nice pair of tits, then we'll probably feel like we should see more of a nice pair of tits. So we'll go and we'll take a look at it. For women, they like to appreciate someone else's body because I think to some degree it makes them feel better about theirs. I don't know. And because of that, they'll always tell another woman that's showing more skin that they're beautiful in their skin. So why wouldn't she gain more followers instead of losing them over tits? And if anything, I feel as though her whole big boobs thing is a bit of a stretch, because I actually did this before I got in to record. I went to her IG handle, I looked through her entire page, all the way till the bottom, and I found roughly about 12 pictures where you can see some semblance of her tits. Now, I'd have made it 13, but there was the other photo right at the bottom from when she was like a teenager or some shit, and R. Kelly just got convicted. I'm not trying to promote that shit, alright? So I just figured, let me just stick to the 12. So roughly about 12 out of over 500 photos and videos where she seems to, have tits, alright? So if anything, there's not that much tit to show. So if somebody sees big boobs for the first time on your page, why would they feel so inclined that they'd be like, oh my goodness, I just saw a pair of tits on Billie Eilish? I preferred Billie Eilish when she didn't have tits. Scratch, unfollow. It sounds very pointless when you think about it that way. When I was doing a little bit of research, it did come out that apparently she did make some statements about Asians and Israel and shit, and that could have been why she's lost followers. That could actually be a pretty big reason why she's lost followers. But attributing it to your tits, that's the shit that'll get you more followers. I'm not telling other women to go and post up pictures of their tits or anything. Okay, actually, no, go post up pictures of your tits or anything. I will definitely like to see it. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'll follow though. But I'd like to think that tits would get you more followers rather than less. So for someone like Billie Eilish, this seems a little pointless. No offense to nipples though. I feel like if she decided not to focus on the superficial shit and focus on what she said, then probably she'd find why people would want to unfollow her. Plus also, she doesn't usually post up that much interesting shit. She usually wears a lot of baggy clothes, and it's not like she's producing music all the damn time. So it's not like people can constantly feel revitalized by looking at her content time and time again. Plus she doesn't post up that much. So if anything, I feel like people just got tired and they didn't really see anything that they were gaining from following her, so they just unfollowed. Plus nowadays people usually have this funny follower following kind of ratio that they're always trying to get more followers versus following. And I don't know, if enough people feel like, you know what, I'm not gaining anything from following this person, then they'll just, unfollow. Then you'll end up losing 100k subs. But either way, I know it's not because of the tits. Although I'm not gonna lie, the tits have actually grown. Haven't seen the nipples, so either way, that entire form of logic that she's bringing is quite pointless. Anyways, that being said, we should probably move it on to our main topic of today. Now, while I was stumbling across the explore page of the Gram this past month, I stumbled upon a very interesting statement that was made by a Nigerian British actor known as Beverly Naya. Now, she was talking about guys approaching women, and there's a way she said it that just sounded very painful, because it felt like she was feeling pain, because she said, and I quote, "Dear men, it will take nothing from you to walk over to the lady you'd like to speak to. Stop expecting ladies to leave where they are to walk over to you when you signal for them to. It's rude. Respect to the gentlemen who already know this though." End quote. Now, I saw this statement and I saw how she said, like, it felt like it came from the heart. And especially since she's a single lady who's roughly about 32, 33 years old. Like, I can kind of get where she's coming from, you know. She came from a time when she grew up seeing guys approaching women. And I have to admit, in this current day and age, you see a lot less of that happening. So I can understand why she'd feel a little bad about this. But in reality, I don't think she's the only one, and I don't think this affects just her. A lot fewer guys are approaching women. Like, guys are approaching women like face to face a lot less by the day. And there's lots of questions about it. And, you know, normally you'd expect some guy to come on and they'd be like, oh, you know, so this is how you approach women. Guys nowadays don't know how to approach women and they always mess up. Let me show you how to do it. And probably I'd be the best person to start talking about such shit. But I'm not gonna lie to you, I'm probably the worst, because I'm genetically predisposed to actually have it easier with babes than most other guys. Cause I'm over 6 feet tall, I have a pretty good fair complexion, I'd like to think I'm pretty good looking, some women have said so, and I could make a joke or a pun or two here and there. And even though the joke or the pun isn't really a part of genetics, the other bits make it easier for babes to be more receptive to me because I'm considered attractive to a pretty huge number of babes. Now, that in and of itself makes it harder for me to go and show somebody who's like 5'2" how to approach babes. Like, it's not very easy for me to do that. Trust me, I've tried. And for me to say that the height doesn't matter, that the looks don't matter, when it comes to approaching a babe, like, I'd probably be lying to just about any guy that I'd be trying to quote unquote coach through the entire thing. So in a sense, I'm probably the worst person to talk about how to hit on women. But what I can say for a fact is, there's a lot fewer guys today that are approaching women than has been over the past, say, 20-30 years. And to a certain degree, you could say that it's a cause for concern, but there's reasons behind it. You know, first of all, when you look at the idea of hitting on a babe, it requires a ton of confidence. It requires for you to be sure of yourself. But more so than anything, it requires you to actually be able to handle rejection, or at least not even have the fear to take it, which I don't think a lot of guys have nowadays. Like, I don't think a lot of people nowadays are built for rejection. And I honestly feel like there's a lot more guys nowadays that are afraid of approaching women because of the idea of rejection. And while yes, the people that are supposed to be, or the people who would probably be approaching Beverly Naya are a lot older than the teenagers and the early 20-year-old guys that are, you know, in the current millennial and Gen Z space right now, the issues are roughly the same, in that there's a lot fewer guys approaching women, and there's a couple of reasons for it. And I tried to kind of compile a few of them together just so that I can kind of explain what it's like for guys right now. So when you think about why few guys want to approach women nowadays, well, firstly, like I said, there's a lot fewer of us that are bold enough or confident enough to approach a lot of women. And partially it's because there's a standards issue. Like, if you look at people from like the teenage times as they grow up, people usually start having these standards on what's good, what's not, you know. People will start kind of judging the book by its cover in terms of, do you make money? Are you doing well? You know, are you big and buff? Are you small and skinny? Do you dress well? And those standards do kind of serve as a precursor to, you know, your selection of a mate as you grow older. But more so than anything, like, it's something that's been there for a long while. And if you think about like a small town where there aren't that many people, then the standards wouldn't be that far off. But when you think about right now, where we're exposed to social media and we have incredibly buff guys, be they on steroids or not, at the age of 18, and, you know, people that are doing super well in the online influencing space, you find that it gets harder for a lot of guys to feel more confident about what they've got. And if anything, like, you can go and check on as many studies as possible on social media and its impact on mental illness, more specifically depression. So there's a lot more people that usually end up leaving social media, or they end up closing social media feeling worse than they did when they logged in. And that translates to how you'd approach women, because Now, if you see all of these standards and babes are flocking towards one kind of guy, or this person's getting so much interest, you might feel a little short-handed and you might have a bit of a self-esteem issue, which will prevent you not just from, trying to be your best version, but you also won't feel like you're enough towards the other people that you would like to approach. Like, you won't feel like you'll be able to match up to them. All right. And if you don't feel like you're good enough, then you definitely won't approach, because you've already expected the rejection. Hell, you've already seen the rejection coming, so you might as well avoid it and continue living your life in its boring, miserable manner. Because it's better to live the fantasy than to go approach and get rejected or end up getting friend zoned. All right. Then there's a second reason, which is DMs are a lot easier for you to approach a woman in than in person. Like, you require a lot less courage to dive into the DMs, which, I'm not going to lie, usually seems a bit weird, because when you approach a woman face to face, it's not like she'll be recording you 99% of the time. So it's not like there'll be screenshots of you approaching a woman in real life. But if you approach using the DMs, she can take screenshots, share to her friends, they can clown on you, and you can get rejected and shit. But for some reason, people are more confident approaching via the DMs. And I think it's mostly because, one, you can think through your shit. Two, you can consult other people while, you're howling at a babe. And three, because you can't see them face to face, a lot of that anxiety, a lot of that fear kind of gets put aside. Because if you can holler at her and you make sure your profile looks good enough, or she looks at your profile and she's like, he looks aight, then you might actually get a chance. Plus, there's that discretion that can come, provided she doesn't share your screenshots. And it's not as bad as being rejected out in public, I'd say. Like, essentially, it all comes down to the fear of rejection to a certain degree. Then the third reason, which is usually the one that we don't like to talk about because it sounds a lot less fun, is a lot of us are afraid of being labeled as abusers. And this is something that appears with guys that are a lot older, because you would not want to approach a woman and be looked at like you're some kind of pervert. Like, it's a thing. And in this day and age where you simply looking at a woman can have you labeled as a harasser, it's something that a lot of guys would want to shy away from. So a lot more guys are a little bit more protective of their reputation rather than the ability to get some from a babe. Because here's the thing that a lot of people don't usually like to get. The difference between her considering you as disgusting and her considering you as a flirt is whether she likes you or not. And yes, you can also add the approach, but a lot of times if a babe really likes a guy, the approach doesn't really matter. As long as you're not excessively inappropriate, depending on what her version of excessive is, you'll probably get the goods. And if another guy was to try the same thing, she'll say ew, or she'll call it disgusting, or she'll claim you're a pervert or you're too much. Like, this is shit that I've seen happen with one particular babe. Like, the current man that she's with went and approached her one certain way and really pushed and really tried to get with her, and eventually she agreed. Now another guy went ahead and tried the same exact tactic. Heavy communication, put in quite a bit of pressure here and there, and just slide in a couple of bits here and there that might seem a little bit inappropriate. And guess what? She felt offended. Like, that in itself is something that will baffle guys for a very long time. And because we can't know whether she's going to like us or not unless if we get the cues, then it's a lot harder for a lot of us guys to just look at a babe and be like, you know what, I'm just gonna approach her. And that's going to push quite a number of guys that would want to approach you that you might have given a chance to, but they don't know about it, quite far off. And at the end of the day, because a lot of guys are going to be very shit at picking up at social cues, because a lot of guys are going to be very crappy when it comes to reading and understanding body language, especially if it's in different cultures, a lot fewer women are going to end up being approached. And that's just what it is. Like, it's a defense mechanism because we want to protect ourselves, because nowadays being labeled as a sex offender is roughly the same, if not perceivably worse, than being labeled as a murderer in this current society. Because guess what? They put your name out there, they put your information out there, and people come at you. Whether the story is true, whether it's false, whether it's subjective, like, people are still gonna come at you for being an abuser. And a lot of people would much rather save their reputation with that. which is part of the reason why you'll find a lot of celebrities will send one of their people in their crew to approach the woman and be like, yo, so and so wants to talk with you, as opposed to the celebrity just straight up walking up to the person and saying, hey, can I take you out for dinner, whether they'd say yes or no. So probably at this point in time, we need to start asking ourselves if this supposed epidemic or pandemic of guys not approaching women will actually improve and or change, of which I don't really know if it will, because not unless if we can get past the shaming of guys for approaching a woman or trying to make a bold move, whether they know what they're doing or they don't, not unless if we get past the whole idea that at any point if she doesn't like you, you could be an abuser or a harasser, like out of the way, I don't think guys are going to feel more confident approaching a woman. But maybe this is the point in time where the hunter becomes the hunted. More and more women have started approaching guys, and I think it's actually a pretty good thing, because if anything, your chances of getting a guy just by the fact that you could be a half decent babe are a lot higher than a half decent guy trying to get any babes at all. Because unlike women, guys are a lot less selective when it comes to choosing partners, be it sexual, although with relationships we could be a little bit more selective, but still at the end of it, we're a lot less selective than women. So your chances of getting a guy are a lot higher than the chances of a guy getting a girl or even girls. So if anything, maybe the babes need to be the ones approaching nowadays, because I think a lot of them have been so used to rejecting guys and friend-zoning guys. Y'all probably need to know what it feels like to be on our side of the table, so that you can know what it's like to be rejected, to know the kind of confidence and the kind of balls, of cojones that you require to approach somebody that you're crushing on, or somebody that you like, or just an attractive person. And at the same time, just so that I don't take a dump on women the entire time, I think guys also need to know what it's like to be on their side of the table, to know what it's like to want somebody but know that you can't date them for certain reasons, to reject somebody because there's something small that you've noticed that you wouldn't want to take with you, if the both of y'all are supposed to be doing some shit, to know that sometimes it's very hard but they have to reject you. Like, I feel like guys also do need to experience some of that shit so that both sides can actually understand what it's like when someone's being approached and when somebody's going to be rejected. But either way, if I'm to answer Beverly Naya and her situation of feeling like it's rude the guys do that, probably you should start approaching those guys. It's actually not rude. There's nothing rude about that. And maybe a good part of the reason why you think it's rude is because you feel like you're on this high horse and every guy should approach you. So maybe if you got off your high horse and actually decided to go and approach guys like, regular human beings, then maybe your chances at getting a guy would probably improve. But then again, I could be wrong about this, so I want to know your thoughts on this. Should guys start being approached by women a little bit more? Should the ladies start putting in a little bit of game and shooting their shot with guys? The DMs are open. On Instagram, it is at Breaktime on Westside. On Facebook, it is also at Breaktime on Westside. And on Twitter, you can slide into my personal DMs, which is at Bagaka the D. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end. And if you are listening through Castbox, feel free to drop your thoughts and comments below. If you feel like dropping a rating or review and you happen to be on an app that does it, aka Apple, feel free to drop that one. I will definitely appreciate it, and I will catch you guys on the next break.